Welcome online. We're going to give people a little bit of time to the Zoom populate here. All right, it looks like we are at critical mass to get started. Welcome to this listening session about the American Conservation and Stewardship Atlas. My name is Shantha Reto. I'm the Director of Intergovernmental and External Affairs at the Department of the Interior, and I want to acknowledge that today I am zooming in from the ancestral lands of the Piscataway people. I'm delighted to be moderating today's conversation in partnership with my colleagues here at Interior, as well as the White House Council on Environmental Quality, the Department of Agriculture, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Our session today will have three parts: an overview from the White House Council on Environmental Quality about the America the Beautiful initiative, a presentation about the goals of the Atlas, and then comments from those who have registered to speak. I'll go over the guidelines for the oral comments when we reach that section. Today, we have a wide range of interagency representation on the call. It is so great to be joined by the very diverse breadth of colleagues who I know are listening in closely in the background. This listening session is one of the three that we're hosting in January to help inform development of the American Conservation and Stewardship Atlas. And so with that, I'd like to invite Stephanie Harding, Senior Director for Lands at the White House Council on Environmental Quality, to share remarks.
Thank you, Shantha, and hello, everyone. We very much appreciate the time you are taking to join us today, or I should say tonight. Before we jump in, I want to provide a bit of context for the conversation. The American Conservation and Stewardship Atlas, as you all know, is part of President Biden's call to action to conserve and restore our nation's lands and waters. One of the president's first actions in office was to sign an executive order establishing America's first ever national conservation goal. It's a goal of conserving at least 30% of the nation's lands and waters by 2030. In setting this big and visionary goal, the president directed his team to do a couple of things. First, he asked the agencies represented here to get a broad range of inputs from stakeholders and leaders across the country and to come back with recommendations for how to pursue this national conservation goal in the right way. And second, the president directed that we develop a way of assessing our collective progress towards this national conservation goal. Today, we are having a listening session to really focus on this second task, the development of the American Conservation and Stewardship Atlas. But let me talk for just a minute about the broader vision for conservation that the president has outlined. Over the first part of last year, we received some extraordinary input from a wide range of stakeholders that went into the development of the administration's conservation vision, what we're calling the America the Beautiful initiative. What was striking about the input we received was that the extent of agreement and shared values across many stakeholders, leaders, geographies, and political perspectives. Agreement on the value of natural places in the fight against climate change, in protecting clean drinking water, and in safeguarding an abundance of diversity of wildlife. Agreement that we can and should be doing more to support and accelerate locally led conservation efforts of all kinds across the country. Agreement on the need to expand access to the outdoors and nature for all communities. And a lot of agreement on a set of principles which we adopted as the foundation of the America the Beautiful initiative in a report we published last May. These 8 principles here on the screen are here to guide all of the work that the Biden administration will do to advance conservation. Last year, in launching the America the Beautiful initiative, we also identified 6 areas of early focus for our work in conservation. These areas of focus also reflect what we heard from the public and stakeholders and are guiding how federal agencies are prioritizing their conservation and restoration work investments. And it really has been a busy past 12 months in getting the America Beautiful initiative up and running, and in beginning to make strides toward that ambitious 10-year goal the president articulated on day one. With the Biden administration, we've created the America the Beautiful Interagency Working Group, co-led by my boss, CEQ Chair Brenda Mallory, Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland, Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack, and Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo. The working group is here helping to coordinate and advance conservation and restoration work across government, with lots of agencies playing a big role. In the past year, you've seen USDA make big investments to support private lands conservation, enrolling more acres in the CRP program and making its programs easier to use and more responsive to the needs of farmers, ranchers, and other landowners. You've seen NOAA propose the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary off the coast of California, expand Flower Garden Banks National Marine Sanctuary, and propose new estuary and research reserves in Connecticut, on Lake Michigan, and in Louisiana. You've seen the Department of the Interior, together with USDA, take action to facilitate tribal co-stewardship on public lands and waters. DOI also made major expansions of hunting and fishing access on national wildlife refuges, added new national recreation trails in 8 states, made big investments in new parks and outdoor spaces through the Great American Outdoors Act, and is working with states and tribes to conserve big wildlife migration corridors. Of course, there's more. In restoring national monuments, the president has reaffirmed the principle that once a place is protected, it is to be protected forever. And across the country, from the Tongass National Forest in Alaska to the Everglades in Florida, we are working to conserve and restore the health of some of the nation's most important ecosystems. And we are truly delighted that Congress passed the president's bipartisan infrastructure law, which makes the largest investment in restoration and resilience of natural systems in US history, some of those which were rolled out just today. So I also have to say how exciting it is to see states, tribes, and local governments advancing their own visionary and creative conservation goals across the country. The America the Beautiful Progress Report, issued in December, has a lot more detail on the collaborative work accomplished over the past year on conservation. Now, in addition to the work we are doing to help support locally led conservation efforts, the Interagency Working Group is also tasked with helping to measure our progress along the way. So we have a subcommittee composed of some of the best and brightest minds at the U.S. Geological Survey, NOAA, USDA, and beyond that's helping to conceive and build the American Conservation Stewardship Atlas. And with that, it is my honor to now turn it over to Chris Hartley of USDA, who's the co-chair of the Measurement Subcommittee, to talk about the development of the Atlas. Chris?
Thank you for those comments, Stephanie. The goal of the Atlas is to bring together the best available data to provide a widely accessible and comprehensive picture of conservation and restoration work in America. We're interested in how the Atlas can measure and track progress towards the 30% goal, but we're also interested in hearing from you about the additional data and functions that the Atlas could capture to be most useful to the public. We appreciate that America the Beautiful celebrates a continuum of conservation actions. We recognize that many of the uses of lands and waters can be consistent with the long-term health of natural systems in this country and can contribute to the efforts to advance climate resilience, safeguard biodiversity, improve equitable access to nature, and strengthen the economy. To help develop this atlas, we are gathering feedback from the public and engaging experts and stakeholders for insight into potential metrics, tools, data gaps, assessments, conservation classifications, and data schemas. We are beginning to develop what we are calling a beta version of the American Conservation and Stewardship Atlas, to be released by the end of 2022. We want to continue the conversation about what is needed to provide a more comprehensive picture of conservation and restoration in America, to track progress toward our goals, and to help inform efforts to address climate change, improve biodiversity, and enhance equitable access to the outdoors and all its benefits. The Atlas will bring together readily available, authoritative data. For the beta version, we'll be testing and building technology that enables data integration, user interactions, a map viewer, and dashboard displays. We know the development of the Atlas will be an ongoing and iterative process to ensure that we include data that represents a variety of conservation efforts. Ultimately, we hope that the Atlas will be an enduring, useful tool for the public. land and water managers, and policymakers to better support conservation, restoration, and stewardship action across America. We are requesting feedback in three primary areas. One area is about science and data and how we can ensure the Atlas is an authoritative and useful tool. The next area is about conservation as a continuum and how the Atlas can reflect the diversity of work already underway. The questions in this area address what type of actions, attributes of land and waters, and contributions toward the initiative should be considered. The last area is how the Atlas can best reflect outcomes related to biodiversity, climate change, and equitable access to nature. We very much welcome written feedback. The slide includes information about how to submit comments online. Today's feedback is also to be complemented by one additional listening session this month and conversations with states, counties, tribes, and stakeholders. With that, I'll turn it back to Shanta, who will be facilitating the next portion of our session.
And thank you so much for that overview. So we will now transition to hearing from registrants, but before we do, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. The session is being recorded, transcribed, and live streamed to the public. Speakers will be called upon in order of registration, and pre-registration was required for those who wish to offer verbal comments. To further assist with identifying yourself when it is your turn, you may use the raise hand feature. Speakers will have 90 seconds to speak, and there will be a 90-second visual timer on the screen to indicate how much time remains. Before your turn to speak, the Zoom tech will prompt you to unmute. If you are calling in by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute. Now, because we want to hear from as many people as possible, we will move on to the next speaker when the timer runs out, and we will not allow screen sharing. And because we want to hear all voices, we will stay on until everyone who has registered has the opportunity to speak. Additionally, all participants will have the opportunity to submit written comments through the Federal Register process. I also want to establish a ground rule about respectful discourse. This listening session is a place for civil discourse, and we welcome diversity of opinion and thought. We request that you remain considerate of the agency representatives and your fellow participants. Thank you again for your time today. And now, to get us started, we will take a look at the first 10 speakers. When you see your name in the queue, please use the raise hand function, or if you're on the phone and you know you're in the first 10, hit *9. And our first speaker is Lori Paterka.
Thank you. My name is Lori Paterka, and I'm dialing in from the Northern Mariana Islands. I'm the Executive Director for the Friends of the Marianas Trench, and I speak on behalf of our organization. You have heard, possibly you will hear testimony from other organizations about the potential role of other effective conservation measures, sometimes called OECMs, in reaching 30 by 30 goals. Our organization joined 20 other American organizations in making recommendations for how this policy tool could be used in the United States. The Chamorro and the Wabash people are the indigenous people of the Mariana Islands and longtime stewards of our surrounding waters. We're very proud of our fishing tradition, which is conducted near shore and between islands, but our offshore waters have been virtually unfished by commercial fishery and industrial interests for 40 years. A combination of geography, socioeconomic realities, and government policies, including the Jones Act, fishery rules, and the declaration of the exclusive economic zone in 1983 have resulted in our waters being a de facto conserved area, and we think this should count towards the America the Beautiful as an OECM as long as a few conditions are met, which we will provide for in a comment letter. The US EEZ around the Mariana Islands is the last unfished wilderness in the United States, and our people should be recognized for our stewardship. We ask President Biden to recognize our surrounding waters as the world's largest OECM. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we'll hear from the representative from Michigan League of Conservation Voters.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bentley Johnson. I am the Federal Government Affairs Director for the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. People that know me know that I'm fiercely proud of my home state of Michigan, and a big part of that is the incredibly special outdoor places and activities we have here in the Great Lakes State. And we don't take that for granted. We love to get outside, have fun. We know that we have to protect these places and invest in conservation so future generations can enjoy the same places and activities. Voters have really made this clear at the ballot box, and elected officials listen. We've passed historic ballot measures to improve our Natural Resources Trust Fund. Our Department of Natural Resources has launched a public land strategy to guide their management over the next 5 years. And Governor Whitmer and bipartisan members of the state legislature and advocates have strongly supported a 30 by 30 approach to protecting 30% of our land and waters by 2030. We're excited about the Atlas helping to guide and align these efforts, but we're greatly concerned about the challenges mentioned: the biodiversity crisis, lack of equitable access to the outdoors in communities of color and low-income residents, and of course, the climate crisis. And so we have immediate opportunities to protect ecosystems and landscapes now and create that access. You know, for instance, we have a new Flint State Park using ARP dollars. We have several wilderness proposals in the Upper Peninsula, Trap Hills, Norwich Plains, Sturgeon River Gorge Wilderness Edition. So the opportunities are there, and we'd love to partner with the federal government and the America the Beautiful initiative on this.
Thank you so much. Next, we will hear from the Conservation Lands Foundation.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn Torres, and I'm the Senior Field Director at the Conservation Lands Foundation. For more than a decade, CLF has led a national movement of grassroots advocates to protect, restore, and expand the national conservation lands. To support this work, we recently launched in partnership with other organizations, the Climate Atlas, which is very similar to the proposed American Conservation and Stewardship Atlas, which we're speaking about today. The Climate Atlas was specifically developed to provide access to the kinds of information necessary to make policy, land use, and public access decisions, particularly decisions around which public lands to protect for their natural values, and to report on why those decisions are important and the ways in which they impact the public. We applaud your efforts to put together a national atlas and for moving forward the America the Beautiful initiative. The BLM and public lands it manages will play an outsized role in achieving the President's America the Beautiful initiative and the climate and biodiversity conservation goals he articulated. The agency has broad discretion to provide durable administrative protections through resource management planning processes, and these administrative protections should count towards 30 by 30 goals when they meet or exceed specified conservation thresholds, and policy changes could be developed that increase the rate and prevalence in which lands meet these minimum standards. We and our network of more than 80 stewardship and advocacy organizations look forward to continuing to engage with you in the development of the Atlas and advancing locally driven conservation initiatives to help meet our shared public lands conservation goals. Thank you.
Thanks. Next, we'll hear from the representative from Environment America.
My name is Kelsey Lamp, and I direct the Oceans campaigns for Environment America. First, I want to thank President Biden for committing the U.S. to protecting 30% of our oceans by 2030. As warming temperatures and pollution put stress on our oceans, marine species like whales, sea turtles, and coral struggle to survive. Marine protected areas are a critical tool to give them a brighter future. A 2021 report I co-authored entitled New Life for the Ocean examined 6 long-term, highly protected marine areas. The report found that marine protections can lead to recovery of fish populations, help endangered species, and create ecosystem resilience in the face of climate change and natural disasters. Highly to fully protected areas are the most effective at obtaining conservation outcomes. The Atlas should lay out what areas of America's oceans already have high to full permanent protections and distinguish between levels of protection using the guidelines laid out in the MPA guide, so we can evaluate the protection's impact on biodiversity. And while the US has protected some areas, many types of marine habitats are not yet in our network of highly protected MPAs. We should permanently set aside a geographically and ecologically diverse array of habitats in strongly protected areas to meet or exceed the national 30 by 30 oceans goal. If we do this, we will give future generations the opportunity to appreciate our amazing ocean for years to come. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have a representative from Greenlatinos.
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Angel Peña, and I'm calling in from the stolen lands and broken treaties of the Hornado Mogollon, or down here in southern New Mexico. I'm calling today as Public Land Policy Director for the Greenlatinos. This new 21st century of conservation can allow us to truly acknowledge and take on firsthand just how intertwined our public lands and the environment are with issues centered around justice, race, and equity, which is why we strongly support the proper protection of Castor Range and Naviquame designated as national monuments. We also strongly support the Biden administration and the Department of the Interior to leverage and use as effectively as possible the tools in our tool belt, such as the strategic and effective use of the Antiquities Act. Greenlatinos will share our many thoughts in our detailed written submission. And instead, in this forum, I would like to share that while we appreciate and truly acknowledge this opportunity to provide public comment, we are also hopeful that this is only a glimpse of the type of engagement occurring, because many aspects of this process, from the virtual format to the restrictive times and dates to only having 90 seconds to share our thoughts, all work as barriers to who can be heard in this process. As you know, environmental justice depends on a consistent, sustainable practice of inclusive collaboration, ensuring that historically absent perspectives are not supplemental, but foundational, but foundational to the process. And we truly do appreciate you all taking this on head on. Thank you very much, Ms. Shanta, Ms. Stephanie, and Mr. Chris, for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we'll hear from the representative from Nevada Conservation League.
Hi, hello. My name is Andrew Sierra with the Nevada Conservation League. Nevada is facing extraordinary challenges. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
It's very faint. If you have a way of speaking louder or getting closer to the microphone.
Gotcha. My apologies. My name is Andrew Sierra, and I'm with the Nevada Conservation League. Nevada is facing extraordinary challenges. Record-breaking heat, raging wildfires, and historic drought continue to devastate communities and threaten ecosystems. We know that protecting our lands and waters is one of the best ways we can fight against the climate crisis. That's why we're grateful President Biden has pledged to conserve 30% of our lands and waters by the year 2030, the first ever national conservation goal to meet the scale of the crisis facing climate and nature. It's also why Nevadans took to our legislature, and in 2021, Nevada became the first state in the nation to pass a 30 by 30 conservation bill, demonstrating our commitment to climate action and recognizing the larger role we play in a nationwide effort to preserve our lands, waters, and wildlife. One of our biggest opportunities to meet 30 by 30 includes the designation of the Aguiquame National Monument. Aguiquame, the Mojave name for Spirit Mountain, is a center of creation for indigenous tribes. Spanning 450,000 acres, the landscape includes sacred indigenous sites and biodiverse wildlife in the Mojave Desert. A robust coalition of tribes, local communities, conservation groups, and elected officials are already working towards its permanent protection. Now, with the support of Congresswoman Vita Titus and Congresswoman Susie Lee, Nevada is prepared and eager to work with the Biden administration to establish the Aguiquame National Monument and ensure we can meet our ambitious and necessary 30 by 30 goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the representative from Sierra Club. Dan, you are still muted. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Hello. Yeah, thanks for this opportunity to comment. My name is Dan Ritzman, and I'm calling in from the ancestral Tiwa and Apache lands outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm the Lands, Water, Wildlife Campaign Director for the Sierra Club. We commend the administration for establishing a national goal to protect at least 30% of our lands and waters by 2030. The National Atlas should establish a strong definition for what counts in 30 by 30. Lands and coastal water that are durable and protected to and managed to support functional ecosystems and the species that depend on them. Currently, this described places categorized by the USGS as GAP 1 and 2 lands, and this level of designation should be the foundation of terrestrial accounting in the Atlas, We strongly support efforts to increase areas covered by these protections in pursuit of the 30 by 30 goal. The administration should work in meaningful partnership with tribal nations to identify conservation and engage in meaningful government-to-government consultation on how to best protect, care, and access and steward cultural landscapes and sacred sites. Additionally, the Atlas should separately evaluate and measure progress towards the distinct goals of biodiversity conservation and equitable access to nature. These are both important and worthy goals. Special focus should be granted to prioritizing and measuring close to home conserved areas, especially within and adjacent to historically underserved communities with equitable access to nature. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, we'll hear from the Western Leaders Network. And also, Jessica Pinsky, if you are on the phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, and thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Gwen Lackelt. I'm a former twice elected county commissioner from Colorado and the executive director of Western Leaders, a network of 450 pro-conservation, local and tribal elected officials across the interior West. The Biden administration must act now to address the climate crisis, which is wreaking havoc on the interior West, and protect biodiversity upon which our food and water security depend. It's imperative that as much progress as possible is made during the next 3 years. Every single day for the past several years, I'm reminded of climate change. While beautiful, an endless succession of sunny days now have a more foreboding subtext for agriculture, forests, and with the Marshall Fire in Boulder County, fire season has a new meaning for urban and rural areas. Rafting seasons are shorter, rivers are warmer, Idaho salmon are at risk of going extinct. Local and tribal elected officials are prepared and eager to work with the administration to advance community-led conservation efforts and climate solutions because our communities are at stake. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. And next we'll hear from the representative from Captains for Clean Water. It looks like you are on the phone. You'll need to hit *6 to unmute. If that's you, Jessica, on the phone, raising your hand, *6 to unmute. Might have an unmuting. Oh, is that you?
I'm sorry, this is Taisha.
Oh, hi, Taisha. We are trying to call on Jessica Pinsky from Captains for Clean Water.
Oh, my apologies. I got a notice asking me to hit *6. So get back in line.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for identifying yourself. If Jessica Pinsky is not here, we will move up. We will move to the next set. So we'll change the slide, please. To the next slide. Thank you. So here are the next 10 speakers. Please take a look at this slide and identify yourself if you are in the Zoom and you can see the screen, and use the raise hand function to raise your hand. If you got an email notifying you that you are among speakers 11 through 20 and you are on the phone, please use *9 to raise your hand. And with that, we will move on to our next speaker. And the next slide, we will hear from the National Wildlife Federation. Thank you. And is Mary Jo Brooks here?
Yes, I just gave the most wonderful first two sentences and apparently was on a mute. Sorry about that. I'm Mary Jo Brooks with the National Wildlife Federation. I want to thank the Biden administration for its commitment to the goal of conserving 30% of our lands and waters by 2030, and for holding these public sessions to gather input. Implementing the President's America the Beautiful initiative is critical to addressing both the biodiversity crisis and the climate crisis. I'd like to spend my time today urging the administration to prioritize the restoration of our lands and waters to help meet these 30 by 30 goals. Restoring our forests can make our lands more resilient to fire, increase the ability of those lands to absorb carbon, and expand clean water sources for wildlife and people. Restoring our floodplains and coasts can help communities survive extreme flooding and hurricane events while improving water quality. Restoring lands that have been degraded from mining or abandoned oil and gas wells can remove threats to wildlife and public health while dramatically reducing methane emissions. And finally, restoring our grasslands and sagebrush steppe, where we've lost 40% of our grassland birds just in our lifetime, must be a top priority. We must restore our public lands, yes, but we also must find new tools for voluntary collaboration on private lands. We have an excellent model to follow. The North American Wetlands Conservation Act, which was signed into law in the 1980s when waterfall numbers were in sharp decline. Because of the collaborative actions sparked by that act, waterfowl have since increased by 56%. It's time to launch a North American Grasslands Conservation Act as part of the America the Beautiful initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. And apologies, I think we need to go back one to hear from the representative from Environment California, and then we'll move on to Outdoor Alliance.
Hello, my name is Megan Hurley, and I'm an Ocean Conservation Associate with Environment California. California's coast and ocean are a vital part of the state's identity. They hold the mystery, beauty, and wildness that makes California so special. They're home to remarkable biodiversity, including sea otters and their kelp forest homes, coral reefs and the small life within them, to staggeringly large whales. That's why California has led the US efforts to protect ocean places. Atlas should reflect the type of work California has done to protect the ocean by distinguishing between different levels of protection in line with the MPA guide categories. Highly to fully protected areas are scientifically proven to support significantly more ocean life and benefit the climate far more than lightly protected areas. And the science also shows that we need to protect 1/3 of the ocean in these highly to fully protected areas to allow ocean life to recover and thrive. This should include more areas off of California's coast, home to some of the most biodiverse ocean areas in the world. We need these protections so generations of Californians can continue to enjoy the beauty and the soothing influence of our oceans. We need highly to fully protected ocean places for our own sake and for the sake of the wildlife that inhabits that watery world. Thank you, and thank you for coming back to me.
So sorry we skipped your order. We're going to move on now to the Outdoor Alliance representative, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Levi Rose, and I'm the Land Use Planning and GIS Director for the Outdoor Alliance. I'm joining you from Eastern Washington State on the unceded lands of the Spokane people. Last January, my colleague Louis Geltman and I released a white paper on 30 by 30 describing how recreationists can support the initiative. Within this document, we discuss what could count towards protection and other conserved areas that do not meet USGS GAP status code 1 or 2 criteria, but do an excellent job of protecting conservation values. A potential solution to account for other conserved areas is incorporating other effective area-based conservation measures, or OECMs, a term that has been echoed by other advocates today. In Europe, the OECM criteria is being used as a new conservation approach separate from protected areas, where conservation is achieved mainly as a byproduct of other management. Regarding the American Conservation and Stewardship Atlas, and measuring the progress of conservation, stewardship, and restoration efforts across the United States, our organization advocates for adopting or creating similar OECM criteria that embraces holistic, flexible, and inclusive approaches to conservation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the representative from Salmon State. Melanie Brown.
Hello. Okay, thank you. I think I'm unmuted now. Hello, my name is Melanie Brown. I'm an organizer for Salmon State. I'm based on Tlingit on Ni in the place that's now known as Juneau. I consider myself lucky to winter in the Tongass, and my summer life is spent in the homelands of my people in Bristol Bay, commercial fishing, and returning to Bristol Bay with the salmon, with the wild sockeye salmon. And much of my work as an organizer has been devoted to protecting Bristol Bay. And I'm so happy for this opportunity for Bristol Bay lands to be identified under this conservation framework and included in your atlas. I would ask that you strongly consider looking at the D1 lands that almost were turned over to mining after being identified and withdrawn from development and prioritized for traditional and customary uses. I think that the 1.1 million acres in Bristol Bay would really be good acreage to identify in the atlas in conjunction with the protective efforts under the Clean Water Act. Bristol Bay produces half of the world's wild sockeye salmon and is a really important part of feeding the world. And then, of course, the Tongass are considered to be the lungs of the world and also very important for wild salmon. My time is already up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the representative from Southeast Alaska Conservation Council.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Matthew Jackson. I live and work on Sheet-Kukwan lands in Southeast Alaska. We will be including a lot in our technical comments, but in this space, I wanted to thank everyone for their land acknowledgements of whose Indigenous lands that they're on. And if you don't know or haven't made an acknowledgement, I'd really encourage you to figure out whose Indigenous lands you're on. And I think that would also be a great and powerful addition to the Atlas, is to also map the Indigenous lands of this country, not only reservation lands or lands that were granted to ANCSA corporations, but all the lands in this country, which continue to be Indigenous lands. I think that lens and that layer on the map will be crucial for enriching the other science and data that will be included, I'm sure, in the Atlas. It will connect our scientific understandings of those lands to Indigenous scientific perspectives and traditional ecological perspectives that are often absent from Western scientific approaches. And so I think that including mapping of Indigenous lands for the entire nation is an essential part of the Atlas, alongside of all the other technical and scientific criteria that other people are mentioning. And I strongly encourage this interagency task force to include that in the Atlas. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from the representative from Vet Voice Foundation.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Janessa Goldbeck. I'm a Marine Corps veteran and the CEO of Vet Voice Foundation, a national nonprofit that empowers military veterans to take action on issues that matter. I'm coming to you from San Diego, the homeland of the Kumeyaay people, and thanks for having me. Veterans share a strong connection with the outdoors. We believe that protecting our public lands is a patriotic duty. We strongly support the administration's 30 by 30 initiative, and we're thrilled that you're taking steps to map and understand how loss of nature, climate crisis, and inequitable access to the outdoors pose a grave risk to our nation. While we enthusiastically applaud these efforts, we cannot stress how urgently protections are needed now for certain landscapes. Veterans are working hard to support locally led efforts across the nation to ensure places under immediate threat, like the Grand Canyon, Caja del Rio, Camp Hale, Kastner Range, and Aviquame, are permanently protected. Veterans also believe that it is a moral and national security imperative to address the threats posed by climate change. DoD has officially called climate change a threat multiplier, and it is our friends and family members who are on the front lines. We must move quickly into a 21st century economy that prioritizes energy independence, a value that is unachievable without robust investment in clean, renewable energy like wind and solar, and reforming our broken oil and gas leasing system. So on behalf of the more than 1 million veterans in our network, we want to thank you for the opportunity to underscore our support for the Atlas, and regardless of the status of its development, we urge you to take ambitious conservation action in 2022 to address the climate crisis and move swiftly to use tools like the Antiquities Act to protect places under immediate threat. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the representative from the Washington Cattlemen's Association.
Hello, thank you so much for this opportunity. My name's Ashley House, and I'm speaking to you from the homeland of the Duwamish people here in Seattle, Washington. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Washington Cattlemen's Association, and it's my honor to represent and speak to you on behalf of over 1,200 families here in Washington State. We would ask, as the Washington Cattlemen's Association, that this interagency task force consider the stewardship merits farmers and ranchers bring to our American landscape. Farmers and ranchers provide public benefits relative to biodiversity and carbon sequestration that are important for consideration in this atlas. We ask you to consider our work as conservation and an integral part of this effort. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Next up, we'll hear from the representative from the Aleutian community of St. Paul Island.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Devine. I represent the Aleut community of St. Paul Island tribal government located in the Bering Sea of Alaska. I'm currently calling in from Dena'ina, Elena, in Anchorage, Alaska. First, I'd like to highlight the core principles to pursue collaborative and inclusive approach to conservation and use science as a guide. Those can be incorporated into the Atlas through the documentation and use of Indigenous and traditional knowledge and other ways of knowing that are critical, are a critical part of making the process collaborative and inclusive. Use in the Atlas will acknowledge that Indigenous and traditional knowledge are valid forms of information on par with Western science and contribute to best available information, which should be used as a guide for inclusion in the Atlas. The documentation and widespread inclusion of these knowledges is a long process, and it will need substantial directed resources to properly achieve, but it's very worthwhile and aligns with the administration's goals and directives thus far. Using only readily available data will create geographic gaps and reduce inclusion, and thus offering a consistent, clear, and accessible way to provide data and information, perhaps through the Atlas, the portal the Atlas will be housed at, will improve the breadth and diversity of data. And second, we would like to just say the core principle to support locally led and locally designed conservation efforts to reflect meaningful conservation work already underway is certainly something that needs to include tribal led efforts. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the representative from California Fish and Wildlife. And if you are on the phone, please use *9 to raise your hand. And not seeing any phone numbers with hands next to them, I think we'll maybe come back to this one if we need to, and move on to conservation voters for Idaho, please.
Hello, thanks for having me. My name is Holly Condi. I'm here this evening representing conservation voters for Idaho. My work for CVI is in land and open space conservation and lobbying. In Idaho, a state with roughly 62% of its land and public ownership, private conservation efforts are the next significant playing field. In defining conservation, the America the Beautiful initiative must support the role private landowners and rural communities hold, including farms and private working forests. While public lands have historically received significant credit and funding for conservation efforts, sprawl and commercial development eats into privately owned land with conservation value that could be similarly beneficial to the protection of wildlife habitat and migration corridors. As you may know, Idaho has the fastest growing population in the nation. Idaho's working lands do contribute to mitigating the effects of climate change and help offset that growth. Farmers, ranchers, and private landowners have proven themselves as some of the most effective conservationists. Their dedication to conservation should be recognized alongside the efforts of our public land managers. So too should the collaboration between local government, private landowners, and federal agencies. It's imperative that the definition of conserved space used by this atlas supports private landowners committed to voluntarily protecting their private property by providing the tools, financial resources, and incentives necessary to restore degraded natural areas and manage private resources sustainably. An elk doesn't distinguish between property lines across healthy habitat, and neither should America the Beautiful's atlas. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the representative from Oregon League of Conservation Voters.
All right, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, okay, I've been having internet connection issues, so hopefully it works for this 90 seconds. So my name is Julia DeGraw. I'm the Coalition Director at the Oregon League of Conservation Voters, and I appreciate the opportunity to call in today from the homeland of the Multnomah and Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and others native to the Northwest region of Oregon. I will be submitting written comments that outline more of what I have to say, but the League of Conservation Voters nationally is working toward a 30 by 30 goal, which has been mentioned earlier, and we are part of that collective effort. And here in Oregon, I think one of the ways to really localize the importance of this work and conserving and protecting more lands is our Oregon River Democracy Act, which would, if passed in its current form, protect 4,700 miles of river, including large buffers on either sides of those rivers throughout the state of Oregon. And that is a huge opportunity to help us meet those 30 by 30 goals. And I think we could partner really well with the Atlas program in trying to identify the areas where we can have those really important conservation values protected. So I appreciate the opportunity to share our thoughts here today and look forward to continuing the conversation and making this as successful and inclusive as possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are on to our next batch of 10. And so if you see yourself on the list noted on the next slide, please raise your hand. If you were told that you were in batch 21 to 30, this is the time to raise your hand. And reminder for those of you who are on the phone who were told that you're in batch 21 to 30, please use *9. And we need help turning the slide deck, please, to the next list.
Thank you. And our next speaker will be Catherine Davis of Wildlands Network, followed by Taisha Adams of Outdoor Afro. Catherine Davis, if you're there.
Yes, thank you. Hello, I'm Katie Davis, Executive Director of Wildlands Network. Thank you for this opportunity. You can hear me, correct? Great, just noting.
Yes, you're coming through fine.
Perfect. All right. The creation of this atlas comes during a time of climate and ecological crisis. Wildlands Network appreciates the America the Beautiful initiative's commitment to preserve biodiversity, and specifically the inclusion of connectivity and corridors for fish and wildlife as one of the key areas of focus within the plan. To support implementation, Wildlands Network's request for the atlas is twofold. First, to fulfill the 30 by 30 goal of protecting and recovering biodiversity, we ask that you acknowledge and incorporate the best data available to document the health of ecosystems, regardless of existing management scheme, including the status, presence, or absence of key species and apex carnivores, and to make the underlying data equitably available to practitioners moving forward, while seriously and straightforwardly acknowledging where gaps in data exist and need to be filled. Second, we ask that you utilize data sets and modeling techniques for plants and animal movement to visually document priority opportunities for cross-jurisdictional projects within the atlas. State agencies, tribal nations, and NGOs have been collecting connectivity data in some cases for decades, and this administration can proactively reach out to these groups to help fill the data gaps needed to weave connectivity into this atlas. In short, we are asking you to design the atlas in a way that visually recognizes the need and intent to connect large landscapes and create an interconnected system of lands and waters managed to protect and restore biodiversity across the country. We look forward to assisting by providing detailed written comments and data sets and points for considerations as you continue to develop the atlas. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, you need to unmute to call on our next representative from Outdoor Afro.
Thank you. And then following that, we'll have Stephen Cohen from the Nature Conservancy. Taisha, please press *6 if you have not. I think that we'll be coming back to Taisha. Once again, Taisha, please raise your hand.
Hello.
And there you go. Taisha, you're
wonderful.
up.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Taisha Adams, and I serve as the National Policy and Education Director for Outdoor Afro. Outdoor Afro celebrates, inspires, and uplifts Black connections in nature. We connect more than 40,000 Black people in the outdoors annually. And Outdoor Afro stands in solidarity with this goal. I defer to Martin Luther King Jr. and his comments on interrelatedness. He said, "It boils down to this, that all life is interrelated. We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied into a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." This atlas is the garment, a mosaic that lets us know our collective starting point. It orients us as we meet these unprecedented challenges, as well as opportunities to right our relationship with nature as natural beings. Too often, access to information and resources continues to be a barrier for engagement. The atlas is the resource that we need to level the playing field. Conserving more private and public land and waterways will give Black Americans and Black people and communities a place not only for recreation and stewardship, but a higher quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Taisha. We next up have the Nature Conservancy. We have Angelo Villagomez as his hand raised. Will you be speaking for the Nature Conservancy? Once again, up now we should have the Nature Conservancy, followed by our next speaker, Holly Rippon Butler from the National Young Farmers Coalition. Okay, Holly, it looks like we'll have you now if you're ready.
Great, thank you. I hope you can hear me. My name is Holly. I'm the Land Campaign Director with the National Young Farmers Coalition, calling in from the territory of the Mohawk, Mohican, and Abenaki people in upstate New York. The key point I'd like to share with you today is the importance of centering the contributions of young farmers and farmers of color in implementing the 30 by 30 vision and developing the atlas. Farmers and land stewards have the transformative power to implement voluntary conservation measures and contribute to climate resiliency, but they must have secure land access in order to do so. The long-term success of our conservation actions now depends on this future generation. Yet farmland is being lost to development, prices are increasing, and young farmers simply can't compete. Secure access to land is the top barrier preventing young farmers from feeding their communities, and this challenge is even greater for farmers of color due to a legacy of structural discrimination and land dispossession. We're really grateful to the administration's commitment to conservation and specifically to working with farmers and ranchers to meet the 30 by 30 goals. We urge you to prioritize conservation tools that not only protect land from development, but for farmers, such as conservation easements with added affordability components. And we urge you to measure and map existing community-led initiatives that are focused on providing secure, equitable, and affordable access to land for young farmers and farmers of color. We look forward to submitting additional comments and continuing to work with the administration. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Aaron Poe from the Alaska Conservation Foundation, followed by Jake Lazier of the Chesapeake Conservancy.
Hi, my name is Aaron Poe, and I'm with the Alaska Conservation Foundation and the Northern Latitudes Partnerships. I'm speaking today from the traditional and continuing homelands of the Dena'ina people in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm offering 3 process suggestions that leverage existing efforts and knowledge in the landscape conservation arena. First, please conduct sincere and sustained engagement with American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian communities to see if and how they might care to be interested in helping co-produce this atlas. In so doing, please be prepared to offer funding support in order to receive this engagement. So many tribes and indigenous organizations are understaffed to help with this kind of work. I know this can be a challenge for agencies, but the collective millennia of indigenous knowledge that these communities have would likely surface different types of metrics and information needs than traditional Western, or conventional, I should say, Western science. Second, please take advantage of the dozens of landscape conservation partnerships across the US by getting in touch with the Network for Landscape Conservation at landscapeconservation.org. They are the national gateway for connecting with landscape partnerships, many of which themselves have already developed similar metrics and tools like what you're pursuing. Finally, as you construct this atlas, please consider the numerous transboundary data layers and partnerships and efforts that exist. And please don't chop off the analysis at the US borders. This doesn't work for people, species, or habitats. I'm happy to follow up on any of these suggestions anytime, and folks can find out more about our work at northernlatitudes.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Chesapeake Conservancy, followed by Eric Reed, Fisheries Consultant.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jake Lazier. I'm here on behalf of the Chesapeake Conservancy. The Chesapeake Conservancy is a charity organization of the Chesapeake Conservation Partnership, which is a partnership representing 50 organizations throughout the Chesapeake Bay watershed, as far south as Virginia, as far north as New York State. When the Biden administration announced their America the Beautiful initiative, it was a very pleasant piece of news for our organization because we've been pursuing our own regional version of 30 by 30 in the Chesapeake Bay watershed for the last 3 or 4 years or so. Within that understanding, we are basing off of existing publicly available protected lands information that we encourage the administration to take part in. That is based off of both USGS's PADIS data set, as well as data provided by local land trust and data providers. From there, we also have built our own Chesapeake Conservation Atlas to identify what lands fall under priorities of farms, forests, habitats, heritage, and human health to help us establish the remaining 7% or so we have in the Chesapeake Bay watershed to reach our own personal 30 by 30 goal. So we encourage the Biden administration to reach out to existing landscape conservation partnerships and build on the data that's already been done. The Chesapeake is a lead in conservation at this rate, and we look forward to seeing what the administration finds at the national scale. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Eric Reed, followed by Jim Kendall of New Bedford Seafood Consulting. Eric, are you there? If you're on the phone, please raise your hand by pressing *9 or *6 to unmute. Okay. Not hearing Eric Reed. Jim Kendall from New Bedford Seafood Consulting. Jim, if you're there.
I thought you had automatically unmuted me. As you may recall, I spoke at the last listening session about the fishing industry and the goals which we are already being under as far as conservation of fishing areas and lands offshore, both in the North Atlantic here, off the New England coast, and the Mid-Atlantic. I can't speak for the South Atlantic, but I'm sure they're under the same type of measures. We currently have 30% of our waters that are protected in one manner or another. And I'm sure if Eric is available, he can raise that issue as well. But the problem with overprotection in this case is that we are currently importing over 90% of the seafood that's consumed here in the United States. Any further restrictions or impediments to the fishing industry will only raise that number from countries who are no longer taking the same care or issues that we are here in the United States. There are probably very few, if any, more conservation-minded industries and people than the fishing industry itself. We live by that, and that needs to be taken into consideration, particularly in light of the fact that there is going to be a lot more land and a lot more protected areas just due to the rising number of offshore wind. The towers that are currently up there are in the hundreds, which will soon be in the thousands. These are not being considered as far as I know, and I would like to ask that question if that can be added into the final document. Thank you.
Thank you for that. It looks like we may have had Eric Reed unmute. Eric, if you're there, we'll give you another opportunity now. If not, Jeff Everett from OGE Energy Corp. Okay. Hearing neither, I believe our next speaker is Carlos Ochoa from Azul. We'll move on to Carlos Ochoa from Azul.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Very well, thank you.
Chris, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. And thank you all for your time and for the opportunity to participate in today's session on the Atlas. My name is Carlos Ochoa, and I'm Azul's National Policy Associate. We are an environmental justice organization working with other grassroots groups to focus specifically on uplifting and helping the Latinx community in regards to conserving marine resources. You know, when it comes to the Atlas, we are especially looking forward to how the Atlas can be a tool that leads the federal government and state and local governments to better serve communities of color and to increase equitable investments in their communities to address historic inequities to access to nature and conservation. On that note, the Atlas cannot just measure what kind of terrestrial and marine area and how much terrestrial marine area is protected, but to what extent those protected areas are equitably accessible to communities of color and specifically environmental justice communities. You know, we understand that there are a variety of different areas that are considered right now that can be tracked under the Atlas, but Azul wants to especially highlight that fully and highly protected areas are the ones that do provide the most biodiversity protection, climate benefits, and as many others noted, the kinds of protections that we do want for long-term marine conservation. And so I do appreciate your time, and we will be providing much more detailed comments in our written comments. But thank you all very much.
Thank you for that. We're going to try going back to Jeff Everett. Jeff, if you're available and ready to speak now, we'd love to have you. Once again, it's *6 to unmute. Okay, we tried. Next up, we have Western Landowners Alliance. Zach Bodine, are you there?
Hey, can you all hear me?
Yes, very well, thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you all so much for the opportunity to provide comment today on development of the Conservation and Stewardship Atlas. My name is Zach Bodane. I'm the Policy Director for the Western Landowners Alliance. I'm here today representing our membership spanning more than 15 million acres of deeded and leased land across the American West. To generally address the questions that the administration is asking to inform development of the Atlas, I want to reference several high-level recommendations that came out of a workshop that we recently hosted. The workshop brought together a diverse group of ag producers and working lands policy experts across the ideological spectrum and focused on how to ensure that working land stewardship is recognized and supported under the America the Beautiful initiative. One of the first recommendations that was clear is that the Atlas needs to be a tool to communicate to the public and policymakers the conservation and community value of working lands, show threats to their viability, and demonstrate what's at risk if they're lost. We also need to capture what is working and explore first how to support and expand these efforts. We need to protect the privacy of private landowners in depicting conservation value of working lands under the Atlas, and ensure that landowner participation does not invite in additional public interference, litigation, or other unintended consequences. We need to create a path by which communities can come forward to define their priorities and use the Atlas to improve how communities and landowners participate in defining and measuring conservation. Finally, we need to take a layered approach to building the Atlas, including mapping layers that show community priorities and community dynamics. So showing alongside what is important, also show how it's important. Oh, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Sorry.
Thank you for that. We should have a listing now of our next 10 speakers. We'll start with Hal Shepard from the Norton Bay Intertribal. And if you are listed in this list of 10, please raise your hand identifying yourself. Once again, if you're on the phone, *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute. Believe that we'll continue now with Hal Shepard from.
Thank you. This is Hal Shepard. I'm a consultant with the Norton Bay Intertribal Watershed Council, and that is an NGO located in the Arctic region of Alaska. The Inupiat and Yupik peoples are represented on the Watershed Council from about five or six different tribal organizations on the council. And the council has been very involved in the management of public lands for the last several years, and very much thanks the Biden administration for this 30 by 30 initiative, a very ambitious goal. The issue in Arctic region of Alaska on public lands has to do with what are called the D1 lands, in which the previous administration has now had attempted to open up over 20 million acres of land in the Arctic region to mining and other types of development. And this excluded considerations of areas of critical environmental concern, very importantly, inadequate NEPA analysis, including climate change analysis, the impacts of climate change on fisheries and fish habitat. And the Watershed Council, the 30 by 30 initiative is a very significant part of replacing those types of protections on those lands, in addition to the hold that the Biden administration has already put on the resource management plans that would implement this opening and of these areas to development. I do also want to talk about the, I think it was mentioned before, the Audubon Society's Climate Atlas. That is an interactive web map that illustrates opportunities for public land protection throughout Alaska, with an emphasis on public lands and U.S. Forest Service land. The map explores areas of high conservation value across a range of ecological attributes, spatial domains, and acreage targets in relation to climate change. So it's a very detailed map, and since the agencies are asking for recommendations on how to apply the Atlas, I suggest referring to the Audubon Society's Climate Atlas. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And next up, we have Patrick Copley from Tuolumne River Trust, followed by Kevin Chang from Ku'aina Ulu. I'm sorry for that pronunciation, but I'm certain you can help in a moment. So once again, Patrick, it's up to you. Patrick, if you're on the phone, please raise your hand, *9 and *6, unmute. Not seeing anything from Patrick. Kevin Chang.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Chang. I'm the Executive Director of Kua Aina Ulu Awamo. Thanks for trying. You did a pretty good job. That means grassroots, growing through shared responsibility, or our acronym KUA means backbone. We were created as a backbone organization to serve network movements of rural and Native Hawaiian community natural resource stewardship efforts. I don't want to talk too much. I think I just want to say that I want to echo some of the comments around this idea of other effective conservation management approaches. In looking into Hawaii, we have laws that allows communities to co-manage, Native Hawaiian communities to co-manage subsistence fishing areas with the government. We have Native Hawaiian indigenous aquaculture sites throughout the islands. Also wanted to mention, and seeing that you use the term tribal, to just remember that Native Hawaiians also have the U.S. has a trust responsibility to Native Hawaiians. And I wanted to laud the idea of making sure that your programs grow jobs, so that an aspect of citizenship is the ethic of care, but also environmental stewardship as an aspect of citizenship. Thank you very much a lot.
Thank you for that, Kevin. Once again, I apologize for my pronunciation. Next up, we have Maureen Droin from the Maine Conservation Voters. Maureen?
Yes, here. Hi, good evening. My name is Maureen Druin, and I am Executive Director of Maine Conservation Voters, speaking from the ancestral lands of the Wabanaki people. I appreciate the opportunity to thank the Biden administration for establishing the country's first ever national conservation goal. I am providing feedback on the atlas from a rural, forested, and coastal state that recently adopted a complementary goal in our state's climate action plan to, quote, increase by 2030 the total acreage of conserved lands in the state to 30%. America the Beautiful's emphasis on flexible, locally led, and collaborative approaches to conservation is important to Maine. 95% of our land is privately owned, yet we consider 20% of our total land base to be conserved, a large part through the purchase of conservation easements. Maine is also 89% forested, making it the most heavily forested state in the country, and our forests help sequester at least 60% of the state's annual carbon emissions each year. Elements like current carbon sequestration, acres of publicly and privately conserved land, and acres lost to development should be tracked in the atlas. And I encourage you to use Maine's 4-year climate action plan for more ideas, especially strategies D, E, and F. Finally, we applaud the Biden administration's emphasis in America the Beautiful to honor tribal sovereignty. While Maine is at the forefront of climate action, it lags behind in recognizing the inherent sovereign rights of the tribes in Maine. These considerations too should be tracked. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today and for the Biden administration's commitment to conserving our natural legacy for future generations.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Commissioner Anna Hansen from Santa Fe County. And then Anna will be followed by Lauren Anderson from Oregon Wild.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Anna Hansen. I'm Santa Fe County Commissioner for District 2. I am making comments from the unceded land, Tewa land in Santa Fe County, New Mexico. Santa Fe County has passed a 30 by 30 resolution supporting America the Beautiful. I am also the president of the Northern Rio Grande National Heritage Area, which represents Taos, Rio Arriba, and Santa Fe counties, and I believe that they could play a very important part in America the Beautiful, because their mission is to protect our traditional and cultural lands. Conservation and protection of our natural lands is one of the most important things we can do for future generations. My district represents more than half of it is forest land and BLM land. And within that is a very important plateau called the Caja del Rio, which needs protection. It has the El Camino Real, Tierra Adentro, Diablo Canyon, and we need to have it protected. It is really important. Santa Fe County has over 6,600 acres of open space and 60 miles of trails, plus 7 Pueblo nations included in our county. Thank you for your opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be from Oregon Wild, and then will be followed by Beth Pike from the Marine Conservation Institute. Speaker from Oregon Wild, can you unmute, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is actually Chandra Legui, filling in for Lauren Anderson at Oregon Wild. Thanks for the opportunity to weigh in on this important initiative. Here in Oregon, there are many opportunities to contribute to achieving the 30 by 30 goal. In particular, on public lands where my organization works, and that comprise roughly half the state. There are many policies in place that must be strengthened to meet GAP 1 and 2 criteria, and new protections that can be added, such as those proposed under the River Democracy Act of 2021 that would protect additional streams under the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act in our state. In addition, to achieve the goals of America the Beautiful, it is vital to protect and restore all mature and old growth forests remaining across the nation. Conserving mature forest ecosystems will safeguard our critical carbon sinks on the landscape and have additional benefits, including preventing erosion and flooding, protecting drinking water, preserving and connecting fish and wildlife habitat, protecting better recreation opportunities, and setting forests up for withstanding and recovering from frequent and severe wildfires. Unfortunately, many of the few remaining intact public forests are still under threat from logging. The Atlas under discussion should use emerging data to map these forests that are most important to protect for the climate and for biodiversity, and then help steer our public land management agencies toward better conservation of these forests. We at Oregon Wild look forward to working with this administration on the America the Beautiful initiative to better protect our mature forest ecosystems in Oregon and across the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Judy Ackerman from Franklin Mountains Wilderness Coalition.
Please protect Casner Range as a national monument as part of the 30 by 30 initiative. My name is Judy Ackerman, Sergeant Major, retired. Here's my story. It was 1995 when the Army said, Ackerman, you're going to Fort Bliss. And I said, oh, no, that's the desert. I don't think I'm going to like that. But I got here and I saw the mountains. I fell in love with this place and I'm still here. Many other veterans did the same. Native-born El Pasoans also treasure our mountains, but Casner Range is constantly under threat of development. In this border community, where 82% of the population is Hispanic and 18% live in poverty, support for preservation of Casner Range is unanimous. Casner Range has unique features, including evidence of First Peoples, pictographs, petroglyphs, and bedrock mortars. Casner Range has the highest concentration of natural springs in our desert mountains. We have endangered flora and fauna, and geologists come from all over the world to study our distinctive rocks and fossils. We have been working to protect Casner Range land for over 50 years, and we're more than ready for you to join our efforts to make Casner Range a national monument. All of those on the call can go Google Casner Range and sign the letter to support Casner Range as a national monument as part of the 30 by 30 initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Next up, we have Christopher Ioli from Simon Fraser University. followed by Randy Spivak from the Center for Biological Diversity. And then just as a heads up, once Randy speaks, we'll return to Eric Reed. So Eric, please raise your hand and be prepared to use *6 to unmute. Christopher Elori, it's up to you. Christopher, if you're there, can you unmute? Okay, it looks like we'll be moving on to Randy Spivak from the Center for Biological Diversity.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Great. I was waiting for that unmute prompt to come up. Good evening, Stephanie, Chris, and Shanta. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Randy Spivak. I direct the Public Lands Program for the Center for Biological Diversity. 30 by 30 is an urgent call from scientists to protect 30% of our lands and waters by 2030, just 9 years from now, 8 years, to stem the loss of nature, native species, and ecological services. We have this need because of development and unchecked extraction that's resulted in habitat destruction and climate disruption. The solution is to protect and ensure connected landscapes that are dedicated to the preservation of biological diversity. So GAP 1 and 2 protected areas should be identified on the atlas and greatly expanded. You'll likely be asked to lower the bar for what counts under 30 by 30. We urge you not to do so. Once land is developed or ecological function is lost, it cannot or rarely be fixed. 3 points on the atlas. 1, please show all GAP 4 codes, but count GAP 1 and 2 towards 30 by 30 and certain OECM areas. 2, show important habitat and connectivity corridors. There are lots of data layers out there to call attention to areas that need to be conserved under 30 by 30, but aren't yet. And that includes our mature and old growth trees and stands on federal lands. Please do not count multiple use lands, public lands under 30 by 30. And lastly, in expanding significant areas, we urge you to consider tripling the acreage of our national forest refuge, national wildlife refuge system. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and we look forward to assisting you in this effort.
Thank you for that. We're now going to return to Eric Reed. Eric, if you're there, please unmute by hitting *6.
It's the third time the charm, Mr. Hartley.
This time I can hear you fine and clear. So I thank you for that. Thank you for being patient with us.
Sorry for the convenience, and I appreciate your persistence. My name is Eric Reed. I'm from North Kingstown, Rhode Island. As an active participant and stakeholder in both recreational and commercial fisheries for over 50 years, I would respectfully recommend to DOI, DOC, NOAA, and CEQ that as you develop the atlas, you strongly consider and engage with all 8 regional fisheries management councils, which, under the authority of the Magnuson-Stevens Fishery Conservation and Management Act and the 10 national standards associated with the Act, create effective conservation areas in the EEZ. This Act of Congress mandates an open, public, and transparent process, including extensive analysis and NEPA requirements when developing any action. Conservation areas established by the councils consider and include ocean ecosystems, biodiversity, sustainability, flexibility to climate change, best available science, socioeconomics, which includes jobs for underserved communities, as well as food production for the American public and public access, and also meets the 8 principles outlined in the America the Beautiful initiative. This comprehensive and informed body of work by the councils should not be overlooked, discounted, nor swept aside as we build out America the Beautiful together over the coming months and years in the right way. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and hopefully I'll be heard without mishap in the future. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Eric, for being patient with us. We're going to switch moderators once again. Shanta will be taking over. Should be putting up our list of our next 10 speakers. Once up, please see if you find your name on that list. If you are on the phone, remember it is *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. And with that, I believe David Gadsden is our next speaker. So I will hand it over to Shanta now.
Thank you. And for those of you who are on the phone who can't see the list of speakers, if you got an email telling you you're between 51 and 60, please raise your hand by hitting *9. We'll now move on to our next speaker, David Gadsden from Esri. And David, if you are speaking, you're on mute. Okay, looks like David is having a hard time unmuting, so we can move on to our representative from Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Happy to be here, and I've enjoyed listening to all these passionate folks speak about this work today. I am Lauren Imgren. I'm with the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, but today I am representing the National Association of State Outdoor Recreation Liaison Officers. We are the governor-appointed members who administer the Federal Land and Water Conservation Fund stateside grant program. We work with communities across the United States who have voluntarily created thousands of public parks and outdoor recreation opportunities within easy reach of where people live. There are over 40,000 sites that have received stateside program grants. Those places are permanently protected. They are the key access point for close to home outdoor recreation, connections with nature, improvement and protection of natural systems, and advancing outdoor-based jobs and economies. NSORLO has previously partnered with the USGS Protected Area Database, Green Info Network, and more recently, the Trust for Public Land to map these sites supported by LWCF stateside grants. We recommend that these and future sites be spatially representative with their relational data in the American Conservation and Stewardship Atlas. This atlas, a kind of national register, represents a comprehensive picture of these valuable community assets and is a key to sustaining them. We look forward to working with all of you to advance the Atlas and expand and improve the local outdoor and conservation estate with our many partners. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from the representative from Hispanic Access Foundation.
Hello, my name is Claudia Pineda-Tibbs. I'm here representing Hispanic Access Foundation's Ocean Advisory Council. The Ocean Advisory Council supports ambitious, durable protection and restoration of our nature, waterways, and ocean as part of America the Beautiful, and are asking for timely action that serves our ocean, coast, and Latino and BIPOC communities. We believe that nature loss and ocean degradation are cross-cutting crises affecting our communities on the scale of the climate crisis and should be addressed by a whole of government approach reflecting the urgency of action. We believe the Atlas should proactively engage and provide resources to underserved communities and tribal nations to integrate their priorities into the initiative. We'd like to see more attention paid to the role freshwater systems can play in America the Beautiful. Since degraded waterways bring pollution from the land to the ocean and impact communities on all fronts, their protection and restoration cannot be overlooked. We'd like to see equity metrics such as environmental justice, climate vulnerability, and nature gap indicators built into the Atlas so we can determine which areas provide the best bang for your buck in terms of benefits and equity for our communities. Thank you for this opportunity. We look forward to working with the administration on this.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from a representative from Next 100 Colorado.
Thank you all. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, my name is Alma Rosie Sanchez, and I'm calling from the stolen and unceded lands of the Ute, Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Sioux people. And I serve as co-chair for the Next 100 Colorado. Next 100 Colorado is a coalition of organizations and individuals committed to making our parks, public lands, and outdoor spaces more diverse, inclusive, and equitable. We look forward to how the American Conservation and Steward Atlas can be a tool that leads the government to better serve communities of color and increase equitable investments in their communities to address historic inequities to access to parks, public lands, and their benefits. Next 100 Colorado believes the DOI must center the voices of BIPOC and other communities that have been systemically excluded from decision-making and prioritize engaging with these communities that are most impacted by climate change and inequitable access to green spaces. Additionally, it is important to intentionally reach out and engage these communities and expand the listening sessions beyond the scheduled 3. Accordingly, we believe a central tenet of the Atlas must be a focus on identifying not just areas of potential opportunities in remote areas, but also in urban and rural communities where access to jobs and parks are critically needed that reflect the racially, ethnically, and culturally diverse population of our country. Finally, the Next 100 Colorado believes our public lands should tell diverse and accurate stories about the history of our lands and about those who connect with them for culture. We encourage developers of this tool to think beyond the traditional frameworks of conservation to ensure that the data collected is innovative and inclusive in its approach. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Next up, we will hear from a representative from Environment America. I understand we already heard from Oregon Wild.
Good evening. My name is Malia Libby, and I'm a conservation associate with Environment America. We work to protect the places that Americans love and promote environmental values. My work is focused on protecting pollinators, and I want to share the importance of 30 by 30 through the example of the much-loved monarch butterfly. The monarch's up to 3,000-mile migration is a stunning example of how our conservation efforts are connected. From rural to urban, domestic to abroad, this butterfly knows no boundaries when it comes to finding a place to rest or establishing the next generation of monarchs. Yet, the eastern population has dropped by 80% in the past few decades. The western population is a tiny fraction of the millions of monarchs that once graced California's skies. To save the monarchs, we need to protect and expand habitat, places filled with native milkweed and flowering plants. America the Beautiful is about protecting places. By doing that, we also protect the species that live in or migrate through those spaces. The monarch is just one species, but it tells the tale of why this effort is needed. Please proceed with an atlas that prioritizes biodiversity and includes abundant habitat for all of America's plants and animals. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from the Conservation Law Foundation.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Priscilla Brooks, Vice President and Director of Ocean Conservation for Conservation Law Foundation, an environmental advocacy organization based in New England, and calling in from the ancestral lands of the Agawam in Massachusetts. My comments tonight focus on the ocean. Thank you to the Biden administration for its leadership on America the Beautiful. The administration has an opportunity to meet the urgency of the current moment. The time is right now to advance a bold conservation vision, including protecting at least 30% of our ocean in highly and fully protected areas by 2030. New England's ocean faces a multitude of stressors. The Gulf of Maine is warming faster than most of the global ocean. Our waters are more susceptible to ocean acidification than scientists previously thought, and we have more overfished stocks than any other region in the country. These stressors are compromising our ocean and the coastal communities that depend on a healthy ocean for their livelihoods. For the ocean, using the science-based NPA guide, the Atlas should evaluate the level of protection and stage of establishment for each marine protected area. Not all marine protected areas are created the same or produce the same benefits. It's important to ensure that protected areas advance climate resilience and protect biodiversity. New Englanders are prepared and eager to meet the 30 by 30 challenge and to effectively address the climate and biodiversity crisis in our ocean and the disparity in access to nature. CLF stands at the ready to support an ambitious approach to protect our planet for the sake of our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the representative from Center for American Progress.
Hey, everybody, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, let's go. All right, the American environmental movement has always included conservation
the responsible use of natural resources, and preservation, protection from extractive human activities. It is my view that the need for both must be highlighted in this atlas. There is a large, mature body of scientific literature describing the differences in policy options and ecological outcomes between conservation and preservation. They should not be lumped together, but rather reported separately. We have always used both and must continue to do so. Currently, the NOAA MPA Center reports that 26% of our national waters are conserved in MPAs, but only 3% are preserved in highly to fully protected marine reserves. We offer the following suggestions for ensuring robust preservation in America the Beautiful. 1, the Biden administration should set realistic, pragmatic, and science-informed targets for highly to fully protected areas in the ocean. 2, report preservation and conservation metrics separately. For example, for ocean areas, the report should use the vocabulary from the MPA guide and differentiate between fully to highly protected areas, lightly to minimally protected areas, and fisheries management areas. 3, go beyond reporting on designations and also report stage of establishment. The 30 by 30 goal should be to designate and implement 30% of US lands and ocean. Designation without implementation is insufficient. 4, report on each ocean basin separately: Western Pacific, Alaska, Caribbean, Gulf, East, and West coasts. The 30 by 30 goal should apply equally to all ocean basins individually to avoid overburdening one region and achieving national goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from another representative from Salmon State.
Good evening. My name is Rachel James, and I work as the Public Lands and Waters Program Lead for Salmon State, based in Anchorage, Alaska, on Dena'ina lands. Salmon State is an Alaska-based nonprofit that supports and advocates for safeguards for salmon and the communities that depend upon them. I'd like to thank the administration, Shanta, Stephanie, and Chris for your time and commitment to a better future for our public lands and the opportunity to speak. Our written comments will take a deeper dive into our technical recommendations for the Atlas, but in my time today, I just want to focus on 3 critical landscapes that should be a priority to include in the Atlas. These landscapes comprise incredible numbers of acres of land, making them incredible conservation opportunities, but more importantly, they're the food source and cultural sustenance to over 100 tribes and numerous communities in our state. As mentioned by my colleague, Melanie Brown, we request that the Bristol Bay's federal lands, 1.1 million acres, be prioritized in the Atlas. Secondly, please include America's coastal rainforest in Southeast Alaska, which includes the Tongass National Forest, a perfect 30 by 30 climate resilience conservation zone target, and also critical to our carbon storage. 44% of all the carbon in the US is in our national forests, including this one. And lastly, the BLM federal lands in Alaska total 50 million acres, vast, incredible, intact habitat that should be prioritized in our eyes in the Conservation Atlas. Thank you for making this a bottom-up approach, for your hard work. We appreciate your efforts and look forward to engaging in the future.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from another representative from the Sierra Club. And if you did get an email letting you know that you are speaker 61 or above, please raise your hand. You're getting to the end. And if you're on the phone, use *9 to raise your hand. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christian Gerlach. I am a community organizer for the Sierra Club, based where I was born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada. In my 34 years of life, I've witnessed the frightening changes from climate change, widespread destruction of Joshua Tree and yucca forests of the Mojave Desert, and drastic drops in Lake Mead and on the Colorado River. My mother, Teresa, was born and raised in a small farming community half an hour south of Yuma, Arizona, by the name of San Luis Rio Colorado, Sonora, a small city that at the time of my mother's birth in the 40s was so proud of the fact that the Colorado River flowed into Mexico there that the town named itself in part after the river. But in just one generation from my mother's lifetime to my own, what was once a lush river so fluid the local government couldn't even build a bridge across the river is now all dried up and simply used as a dirt bike trail. The water that does reach Mexico is only through irrigation ditches and water runoff from farms on the United States side of the border. I ask you to think about what has changed in that time, the dramatic acceleration of the loss of public lands, wetlands, and forests. This is in addition to the drastic increase in the release of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere from the burning and extraction of fossil fuels. In Nevada alone, where I reside, from 1990 to 2018, we have lost some 6.2% of our public lands, or 3.75 million acres of public lands, to development of one kind or another. As a result of this loss, we have seen the acceleration in temperature rise, where Las Vegas and Reno have been named among the fastest warming cities in the country.
Thank you so much. We're out of time. We need to move on to the next speaker. It's now Ed Bowen's turn.
Yeah, Ed Bowen, no comment, listening only, press on, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next we'll hear from the representative from Colorado Cattlemen's Association. Dallas May, if you're trying to speak, you may be muted.
Thank you. I would like to speak about one of the most important imperiled ecosystems, grasslands. 150 years ago, the Great Plains were a sea of grass. Bison were crucial to the health and diversity of native grasslands before they were extirpated from the landscape. Today's cattle ranches fill that role and that void, along with native ungulates such as deer, antelope, and elk. Without all of these animals grazing native grasses, the health of the grass species deteriorates to a monoculture environment, destroying the habitat that biodiversity needs and all species need. Research shows that responsible cattle grazing has an enormous benefit on native plants and diversity that otherwise would not be possible. Intact native grasslands are key to the health of human and natural communities and provide ecosystem services. They support a unique array of plant and animal species, filter and store water, sequester tons of carbon, provide habitat for pollinators, and are the basis of many rural livelihoods. Yet temperate grasslands are the least protected ecosystems on the planet and the most endangered in the United States. Grassland bird species like the lesser prairie chicken have been struggling for decades. Researchers say habitat loss through grassland conversion has contributed to a population drop of 80% in some species since the 1960s. As a group, grassland birds have experienced the steepest decline of all North American birds. And waterfowl and shorebirds also rely on grasslands, using embedded wetlands as migratory stopovers and nesting habitat.
Thank you so much for your comments. The clock has run out. We have Sean O'Brien and Dela Cheney in the queue, but we do not see you on the list. If you're on the phone, please use *9 to identify yourself and raise your hand. And if not, we will move to the representative from Marine Biodiversity Observation Network.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good evening. The American Conservation and Stewardship Atlas is an opportunity to tackle the very difficult problem of making dynamic maps of biodiversity, including people and our uses of nature. Most everything that we do every day, what we eat, our health, and our economy, depend directly on the diversity of life on land, fresh water, and the sea. To conserve, manage, and use resources, we need to know how they're changing, yet mapping life in the sea is especially difficult. The atlas needs to be designed so that the links between the land and the ocean can be visualized easily and in a quantitative way. It should provide us with up-to-date information about life in the sea, from the coast to the deep ocean when we need it. So the atlas needs to provide maps of how biodiversity is changing seasonally and from year to year. And this will allow us to meet the targets that we're setting. This can only be done if we organize data collected by different groups into meaningful information. And this can happen by agreeing on standards for measuring biodiversity, how we format the data, and how we share the information for everyone to benefit from. To make this atlas comprehensive, it requires a partnership between federal, indigenous, state, and territorial governments, the private sector and civil society, and researchers in schools and universities. the Marine Biodiversity Observation Network, and Marine Life 2030, a contribution to the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, are ready to contribute and welcome the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I think we have made it through all the speakers, unless you want to identify yourself at this time as someone who was not able to speak because of technical difficulties, but you were registered. Please raise your hand if that happened to you. And seeing none, I think we have finished. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time and attention. We invite everybody to submit written comments, and we look forward to seeing those. You can submit them through the Federal Register notice, which was circulated in the reminder emails, and we look forward to continuing to receive and review feedback for the duration of the comment period. Thanks, everyone, and good evening.